Welcome to Performing Data in Australasia, a project for researchers who are interested in working with data from performing arts databases. Data as genealogy, or whakapapa, is about tracing lines of influence from artist to artist through performance over time. Whakapapa is a Maori word that refers to the line of descent and the way people are connected to one another. A simple way to think about genealogies in performance is to consider artist biographies. These accounts of careers set out an artist's relations to companies, to training institutions and other artists over time, who they've been working with on which productions and so on. Artists' biographies in theatre programs encourage us to think about lineages, techniques, training and traditions. The Australian theatre artist Melanie Betty has extended this idea by creating maps of her artistic relationships. She describes the maps as pictorial representations, diagrams of influence on her practice. Betty uses these visualizations as tools to foster critical reflection on her artistic practice. Betty's diagrams progressively zoom out from her individual experience to the artists she's worked with and beyond to international traditions that inspired her teachers and their teachers. Betty's diagrams document and reveal how her practice is embedded in an interconnected lineage of artists around the world. This is an exercise any artist could undertake. You could think about how to map your own artistic genealogy. What elements, what people, places, performances, and so on might be involved. What are the connections that you want to explore, the collaborations, the associations, the relationships and influences? And how can these elements and their connections be arranged visually in ways that make sense? Kumu is an online platform you can use to create this kind of genealogic visualization. In Kumu, you create elements and then add connections between elements. You can then export what you create in order to share it with others. Kumu is one example of a visually appealing way to present genealogic data. Palladio is another platform for exploring relations and connections between elements over time. Biographical data on artists' careers are often recorded in theatre programs. Deborah Kaplan argues that harvesting these kind of data can be an important step in telling new stories. So often theatre histories are reduced to just the major players, but there may be other artists and technicians whose contributions buried in these texts tell stories that are worth drawing out. Kaplan's research on the Vilna Troupe, an early 20th century Yiddish touring company, adopts this approach. In this project, an interactive data visualization acted as a companion to her book. First, Kaplan created a data set which catalogued the personal and professional relationships of 290 Yiddish theatre artists who worked on at least one Vilna Troupe production between 1915 and 1936. Next, she visualized her dataset using JavaScript library called G3. The visualization can be filtered using a range of parameters, including connection type, which allows one to focus on the professional and personal relationships between artists in and outside of the company. You can also filter the data by gender, by role in the company, and by discipline. In this way, Kaplan visualized a rich series of relationships across a large network of performers and theatre makers. Kaplan's project offers a model for using these data to reveal a much more expansive theatre genealogy than would ordinarily be available. We can also think about mapping the relationships between characters in a story. Miguel Varela Escobar's work on Wayang is an example of this kind of research. Wayang is a form of Indonesian puppet theatre that traditionally has been documented in physical form in character encyclopedias. Wayang encyclopedias are organised into character entries. Each entry catalogues the narratives associated with that character. Varela Escobar created the digital version of the published encyclopedias. The database can be sorted by character name, by origin, type, and so on. It's a useful resource for a performance genre, providing insight into characters, narratives, and the world that the tradition preserves. Next, what about repertoire? In the project A Global Doll's House, I worked with a research team who set out to account for the extraordinary global success of Ibsen's play A Doll's House. We used the AusStage database at the University of Oslo to build a work-in-progress dataset that will continue to be added to. From this dataset, we were able to map the distribution of the play by venue around the world and to count the number of performances by year. We also undertook network analysis of the entire production history of the play. In undertaking this genealogic analysis, tracing productions of the work over more than a century, we were able to show how elements of the original production, from mise-en-scène to costuming, gesture and character interpretation, were passed down through artists and disseminated around the world. Genealogies of artists and genealogies of repertoire are also explored in research on amateur theatre in the remote New South Wales city of Broken Hill. On that project, we used AusStage to analyse the Broken Hill Repertory Society as a social network. Our findings demonstrate how the activities of the Theatre Society interacted with the interests of the large employers whose commercial activities sustained the town. There was an alliance between mining management and town commerce that supported production. We also revealed the prominent role of women in the activities of the Repertory Society, and we analysed the repertoire of productions produced, 144 plays over 2 decades, to show how the selection of scripts was reflective of trends and changes in theatre production in Australia's capital cities and other centres around the world. Following these examples, your next step could be to ponder what insights can emerge from representing performance as strands of genealogical connection and influence over time. How could you apply these approaches in your own research? How could visualizations and their design with shapes, colour, layout, elements, connections, interactivity and searchability illuminate your understanding? You could run some experiments with a project of your choosing and see what possibilities for interpretation emerge.